Greetings, class. For Chapter 2, let us explore more about those HTML elements and tags that help us navigate a basic page. Let's assume that I want to make a new web page within the larger website that is symbolic of an announcement that I might post in the class. In Chapter 2, I want you to focus on how we organize text so that it makes sense to both people and browsers. When you use headings and paragraphs and inline text elements correctly, you create a structure and a meaning instead of just putting words on the screen. As you study, I want you to be thinking about the hierarchy of the website and to really look into how we can ask ourselves what the main idea of the page is, based on how the HTML communicates what we're seeking to do in terms of structure on the website. And so my goal is to produce an announcement. And how do I get started? I'm glad you asked. So we began in Chapter 1 with a basic web page, and that page is going to play a role throughout this entire class because I don't like to reinvent the wheel. I know that I want to make a new page, but I don't want to type all those basic elements over again. So watch this neat trick. It's going to save you a lot of time in this class when you're making additional pages in the system. Underneath the web folder in this hierarchy, I have my index.html, but I want to have a friend join the party, a new file. I'm going to call it chapter2.html. You're going to note that chapter2.html is simply blank. There's nothing in it, no content at all. Well, I'd like to work real hard to make sure that I have the basic structure. So I'm going to go back to our friend index.html and I'm going to lovingly steal the content from it so that I'm not having to type it over. The key is to remember copy, paste, modify. Copy, paste, modify. Make sure that we modify elements that have nothing to do with this particular page. So this is a Dr. T web page, but in terms of the home page, this is our lesson on Chapter 2. Okay. New title. Okay. No style sheet at this time. That may come in the future, but we're not talking about the home page here. And we're going to talk about this being a course announcement. And this is our Chapter 2 from our notes. A lot of the other content was from Chapter 1, so I'm kind of cleaning that out. So if you look real carefully here, what I've done is I've prevented myself from having to type all the head and the title and the link and all that again. You certainly can do so, but once you know the basic structure of a starter page, you're going to use that to kind of begin from the whole beginning. So with that, we can focus on the key lesson points here, where we're focusing on the heading levels and the hierarchy that such headings bring about in the page, the purpose of paragraph tags, the role that they play in organizing content around headings, the difference between block and inline elements. Oh, sometimes I want to emphasize some text on screen, make it italics, make it bold. We can do those type of things in this world. We also can use different ways of structuring the semantic elements of the document. That's where we talk about the semantic nature of HTML. But okay, I got my heading 1 there. And in this, we also had a heading 2. And in that heading 2, we said that this was a week 1, which you have approached and entered into through the miracle of computing. And what if I was posting an announcement to you that said, in week 1, students, these are the things I want y'all to focus on. Put ourselves a paragraph in there. Of course, every teacher wants to welcome you to the class. And then from there, we're going to say, this week, we will learn how headings and paragraphs organize information. That certainly is a key point. In the next paragraph, we'll say, remember this, students. Remember that, okay, now they put a B, but I'm gonna put strong. B is certainly the old school HTML, and it may be valid in terms of the validator, but I'm gonna go with strong right now, as opposed to using B for bold. Important terms, all right? Now, when I preview, I wonder if it's going to preview index, okay? Yeah. In order to preview chapter 2, I'm going to have to show y'all how to get to it in a different way. We have to link from index to it. That's going to be very, very important. But we have important terms that are going to be bold, okay? Can be emphasized. And scientific notation. Sometimes we want to use scientific notation on the website. Such as, okay, what if I have H sub H2O, good old water. Good old water like we have here in the ranch. Well water. Sometimes you have to fight with those auto tags. H sub O, capital O. Or sometimes we have math expressions, okay? Like 2. Sometimes we need to use a superscript. In that superscript, we might want to put a 3, 2 to the third power. Okay. All this coming from our course lecture notes can also be marked up correctly. Period. Okay. Before I go to that heading 3 over here, let's talk about how I might preview the work I've done thus far. You have to remember that index is going to play a role throughout this entire class. It is the home page of the website. It is the central linking point. So I can't get to any other page without first starting at index in our preview. Key to remember is on index, I'm going to create really a more formal menu as we go throughout this course. But for right now, why don't I just under body start with an H1 here. I'm going to call it navigation menu. And for now, just in the midst of a paragraph. Okay. I'm going to put a HAREF. That is a reference to very, very important points. So when I do AREF equals index.html, that links to itself. We're saying go to home, which also happens to be chapter 1 in our context here. Put a break in between, and that is a XHTML break, but we'll see if that's valid with the validator, if validator likes it. I also want to follow that pattern and link to chapter 2.html. So what have we done here? By putting this paragraph, this navigation menu here, we are creating a link system in preview. Look what happened there. Home, that links to itself, so it doesn't do anything. But guess what? When I click on chapter 2, it goes to our week 1 conversation. I see that I have a typo in the announcement. You know, that's why we preview. We preview to test these things out. I said, okay, I put an extra E in there. Let's take that out. Come back out here and preview. The miracle computing is good. But notice I don't have a way to get back to home unless and until we repeat, right, navigation. We repeat the navigation menu on both the chapter 2 body and on the index body. Now watch what happens here through the miracle of computing. So beautiful and wonderful. I can go to the home page anytime I want. I can go to chapter 2 anytime I want. Home, chapter 2, boom, link it to itself, it goes nowhere. But anytime I can go back to home, and now I'm building a linkable system within the process thereof. So back to our chapter 2 conversation. Notice how important terms became bold, strong. On the notes, notice the proper, probably pure HTML is using the be bold, but I went with strong for the XHTML. That was beat into my brain in terms of working real hard on that. When throughout my college education, I learned several standards for web development. And strong 15 years ago replaced bold, so it's embedded in my brain. It's hard for me to go away from it. But we'll talk about validation at some point, and that will tell us whether or not I'm right in terms of the approach we put here. But it made it bold. Look at the notation H2O, H2O, subscript, superscript 2 to the third power can also be marked up. So notice how it's real easy to have typos in your code here. So you still have to remember what the English teacher told us back in the day. You have to go through and edit this. We're teaching you the markup side, but it's still very much possible to misspell words, to move things around. That's where all our training comes into play in terms of editing content and the human element thereof. So navigation, I saw something that I want to correct here. Announce CC. Let's go spell that the way we want it to be spelled. ANNOUNCEMENTS. Announcements. Boom. That's nice. Line by line. Notation. Notation is what I meant to say here. Can also be, you learn to be able to do your English editing and your HTML editing over time. I just saw those on screen, and I'm constantly going back and previewing, So that looks a lot better. Let's go forth and add that third element for our conversation here. Heading 3s, subheadings to subheadings, they are possible too. What I'm asking you to do is a reading reminder. I so could geek out and type an announcement like this for you at my typical 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm most productive. I could so geek out and type an announcement like this. I want you to make sure that you read the chapter carefully and take notes on the differences between block and inline elements. Yes, study that in the text. What elements live within other elements? What elements form the basis of the outside of elements? What elements can be within other elements and which ones must stand alone? Block versus inline. I really want y'all to study those. And see how our chapter 2 looks in terms of preview. Nice. So very, very basic looking pages right now, but they're coming together in terms of helping us understand what's going on in this system. And remember, we have two main pages, index.html, chapter 2.html, both helping us be a part of this particular discussion. For further practice, make sure you continue to look at the Mozilla Development Network. Keep looking at our textbook in terms of study as well. These lecture notes are going chapter by chapter in your text of this particular course. And I want you to make sure that you study these skills, study this video to help you prepare for assignment 1. For the upcoming research PowerPoint, I'm asking you about elements of HTML, JavaScript, cascading style sheets, how their syntax rules of the language differ and how they're the same, what one is used for over the other. And certainly we are moving towards the final project in building it page by page in this system through these lessons that we teach. So that's a little bit more about inline elements and subscripts that we will use, different tags that help to emphasize text, such as strong. Strong certainly can be replaced with bold. Watch, I'll show you here. You're going to get the same effect. Validation will tell us which one is proper. But see how important terms is still bold? Not a problem at all. And sometimes we in the old school we used to use I for italics, like this. Okay. /I. I'm back over here. What term did I make italics? Okay. I did it on the index basic structure page. Let's go back to index home. See how basic structure is now italics? Okay. In the new school, we use the term EM. I think it's EM for emphasis. We will. Emphasis is the new italics. Let's see if I got that right. We will emphasize EM. So we're going to learn which one is proper when we go through the validation lesson. Continue this journey. I thank you for your kind time and attention. That's our lecture related to Chapter 2. Dr. T, on this journey with you, signing out.